Hey guys, welcome back. So V43 just released a pretty big article going over all the feedback that they got from the last Infinite technical preview and all the changes that are going to be coming to the game for the next flight, for launch, and also quite a lot post-launch as well, based upon the feedback that we gave them from the last flight. There's honestly quite a lot of really good stuff in here, so let's waste no more time and break it down. One thing they do note before we start reading through all the changes is that they say that this list does contain the most common trending pieces of feedback that they received. However, it's not exhaustive, so not everything that's being changed or fixed is in this article, because if it were, this article would be like 7 billion pages long, so just keep that in mind. So first and foremost, I'm sure many of you are going to be very happy to hear this. They are fixing issues with the Waypoint messages and also the Xbox Insider app for the next flight, so you should be able to get your codes to get into the flight more reliably and also on time this time, which is great. Like on the Sunday night, I was still getting messages from people saying, I only just got my code, so fingers crossed that won't happen this time. As per the feedback, everybody loved the music, which is no surprise whatsoever because Infinite's music so far is absolutely goddamn beautiful. But on the topic of audio, they got some feedback saying that some weapons feel like they're too far from their legacy sounds. The Needler, for example, was one of them. They said that they got a lot of feedback that the Needler needed to sound more crystallized and glassy, which I wholeheartedly agree with. They said they're going to continue to iterate on the sound design for the Needler and also the plasma pistol's primary fire, not the charge shot because that sounds absolutely beautiful and dare I say iconic, but they're going to continue to iterate on the regular single shot mode. They're also working on enhancing the grab hammer sound effect as well. And the next public flight will have work in progress versions of these sounds, so given that they're looking at making things a bit more legacy, I'm very excited to hear those new sounds. Whew, I'm looking forward to it. The ability to alter our personal AI, Spartan chatter, and multiplayer announcer volume individually, so separate from one another, will be coming, but post-launch. Moving on to the Battle Pass and kind of progression as well. They said that the Battle Pass in the flight was basically just a mini Battle Pass that was meant purely for that flight, which again is no surprise, there were only like 20 or 30 tiers in it. The full Battle Pass I guarantee is not going to be that small. And they said that the daily challenge model wasn't working properly in the flight, and so it wasn't delivering a play X number of games challenge that supposedly repeats throughout the day. Now, these challenges are apparently replaced after completion, which means, based at least upon my interpretation, that those challenges basically just act as per match XP, but in challenge form, which is a bit weird, but I guess if they can't get a progression system in for day one, that'll do, I guess. They also said that weekly challenges are where we're going to see the more specific challenge types. So, for example, get 10 kills with a BR or get 25 kills with a Needler or whatever. They're going to be more weekly based, so we're in kind of less of a rush to complete them, which I think is definitely a good move, but man, we still need a progression system so bad. They addressed the XP boost timers, so the double XP or whatever boost that you can enable, the timers for those were ticking down in the menus when you weren't in a game, which is strangely similar to Modern Warfare, Warzone, and Cold War. The XP boosts in those games do the exact same thing. And they said, they didn't say that they're going to be changing this or preventing it, rather they said they're looking at improving this experience post-launch. I really hope they are just going to stop that, because I always find it really shady when those things that you get as part of the Battle Pass that you paid for, or that you just like outright pay for in like a bundle or something, for in the case of like Modern Warfare or Warzone, I find it really shady when those things tick down in the menu when you can't actually use them. So hopefully they just stop that for the game's launch and let us only have the timers tick down in game. They also said that they're going to share more details about progression later this month. I'm curious to see what they're going to share. Moving on, the bots were very well received, which again is no surprise to me because, quite frankly, the bots kind of blew me away, but there's going to be some changes to them. They definitely need some changes. Some of which are going to be, in no particular order, they're going to be toning down the god nades on lower difficulties. They're going to be looking at toning down their gunfire accuracy as well, but not too much. Sadly, bots are no longer going to run all in the same direction at the start of the game, so no more overkill nades anymore. Feels bad, man. They're going to be trying to improve their gameplay with equipment, albeit that is going to be very hard to do, and I'm not really surprised. They've said that they've resolved some issues with bots getting confused and standing still midway through combat, which is a bug that I ran into quite a few times, and I'll be honest, it was quite funny, but I'm happy they're patching it. And then finally, they said that they would like to add a difficulty option that's even harder than Spartan in the future, so fingers crossed for Mythic bots at some point in the future. They also said as well that Spartan bots weren't as lethal as they should have been, which I think we all picked up on. They were a little bit underwhelming compared to ODST. Weapon drills were received well as well, but apparently they need to be more specific, so they're going to have something in the weapon drills to teach new players about the alt fire mode. So, for example, the Ravager charge shot or the Heatwave alternate horizontal vertical fire thing, which is good. They also said that they're going to add the ability to swap weapons in drills, but that's going to be a post-launch feature. But the next flight has something called training mode that allows you to quickly swap your loadouts via an in-game menu while fighting bots in a map. So honestly, that's fine by me if that's coming post-launch. If we have training mode that kind of does that, but in a much better way, in a much more realistic kind of environment, then I have no issue with that. Untimed or Infinite. Get it? Infinite. Do you get it? It's like Halo Infinite. Infinite untimed weapon drills are going to be coming post-launch, as are drills for equipment, movement, grenades, melee weapons, and vehicles. Although, I kind of wish they were coming at launch, honestly, because the whole point of Academy is to help new players understand the unique quirks of Halo's gameplay. And equipment, movement, grenades, melee weapons, and vehicles are all very, unique in Halo, and I feel like those drills would be very beneficial being there at launch, but I guess they won't be. They've updated the motion tracker to function like it used to in social games, which means that you show up at all times on the motion tracker unless you're standing still or crouch walking, and this is a change that will be in the next flight. They also said that they got a lot of feedback about wanting the motion tracker to display height indicators, like Reach, Halo 4 and Halo 5's motion tracker did, but they don't mention if they've acted on that in the feedback. Unless, of course, they classify that feature as being a part of the motion tracker of old, as they say. Maybe they do. Maybe that's part of that classic motion tracker. Personal AI are going to be getting more customization options, from different models to hats, props, and more, which is something I'm very excited to see. There's also going to be more AIs added over time, and more in at launch that we haven't seen yet. You're also going to be able to preview your AI's voice in the menus in the next flight as well. They said that some AI and Spartan chatter voice lines, for example, over Yonder, were playing too frequently in the last flight and they've been fixed for the next one. But honestly, I kind of wish they'd kept over Yonder in there as a common voice line. There's something quite charming about that. I liked hearing a 500 years in the future super soldier that's been bio-augmented and it's like this next level sci-fi cyborg shouting over Yonder like a medieval archer or something. I don't know. I like that. They also want to add additional line variants for AIs post-launch to kind of stop them sounding too repetitive. And also, post-launch, they want to let us control the frequency of certain types of AI voice lines. So, for example, allow us to turn down or increase the amount of times they, for example, talk when we pick up a weapon, which is great because I found that voice line to be really pointless. Like, I would see a BR on the map, I'd walk over, I'd pick the BR up, like, I'd have very clear intentions of what I was doing, and yet at the same time the AI would comment on what I was doing and it just seemed kind of redundant, so it's good that we'll be able to, at least post-launch, turn that down. They received lots of criticism about the medal size, the medal placement, and the medal art style, all of which will be addressed for launch, which is good. They've done a revision of the medal designs that you can see here on the screen that retain their rarity colours and iconography, but give them a more classic skeuomorphic design. Now, these designs won't be in the next flight, but they are pushing to get them in there for launch. Now, just to give some opinions real quick, I think these medal designs are definitely a lot better. I think the kind of overarching design of them, the more like classic Halo 3, Halo Reach style design with the borders looks a lot better and it makes them stand out more. But I'm going to be honest, I still am not a fan of the primary colour of the medals being their rarity colour. I feel like this homogenizes the medals too much and prevents them from standing out from one another. It kind of just blends too many of them together, because Killing Spree has the same colour as, for example, Double Kill and all these other medals, and I just think it kind of blends them together too much. I really wish that the rarity colour was a secondary or tertiary colour, and the medal's primary colours were just their Halo 3 and Halo Reach colours. I think if they did that, they'd keep the new edition of the rarity colours, which I think is a good idea, but they'd also retain the kind of classic, very distinct designs of the Halo 3 and Reach medals. I feel like that'd be a perfect middle ground, but these are definitely better than the ones in the flight. The increased accessibility and player expression allowed by the friend or foe system, which is just the outlines, was received well, but it had many issues. Now, they've already made significant FX changes to better communicate a target's health behind the outlines, so if they have full shields, overshield, weakened shields, broken shields, etc., and we'll see these changes in the next flight, which is good. They're looking at letting us disable the outlines entirely, but chances are it won't be possible till after launch, which I think could end up hurting Machinima quite a bit, because that's going to look really goofy in Machinima if everyone's got outlines on. In the flight, gamer tags didn't show up above a player's head when you aimed at them, but that was a bug apparently, as was the toggle that let you either see a gamer tag or service tag above an enemy's head. That just didn't work in the flight, that was bugged as well. And a fix for this may be in the next flight, it may not be, but it will definitely be there for launch. In regards to aiming, they've increased the default sensitivities on both controller and keyboard and mouse, which is good because they were both far too low, including the scoped in sensitivity with weapons that specifically have 5 times scopes and above, which I think is just the Snipper and a skewer. They've also added axial dead zone controls in the settings. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea what they are, and they've said that these should improve the aiming issues that many people had. However, I'm gonna say, I played on both keyboard and mouse and controller, and I had no issue with any aiming. I didn't feel any heavy aim, the aiming just felt, like, fine to me. Maybe I'm lucky. They confirmed something very good, and that is that the zoom feature in Halo Infinite, so the zoom feature that is present on automatics and non-scope weapons, does not function like Halo 5 Smart Scope, which means that unscoped weapons do not receive accuracy buffs when zoomed in, unlike in Halo 5 where they did. All that happens when you zoom in is the field of view decreases, and obviously it zooms in as well. So it's basically what we all thought Smart Scope was going to be in Halo 5 before we saw gameplay, pretty much. It's literally just the traditional binoculars, but for weapons, which is fantastic. But going back to the aiming a little bit, they said that they're tuning the aiming on the sniper rifle for the upcoming flight to make it feel better, but that also the previously mentioned aiming improvements should make aiming with scoped weapons, the sniper and the skewer in particular, feel much better. Now that's great because that's something that I had a real issue with on both controller and keyboard and mouse in the flight. Scope weapon, well, I say scope weapons, the BR was fine, but it was mostly just the longer range weapons, like the sniper and the skewer just felt really awkward on both input systems, and a lot of people said the same thing, so hopefully this fixes that. They said that the feedback on the gravity hammer was pretty much split down the middle between it being too effective and not effective enough, so based on that, they won't be making any major changes, but they are monitoring it. Again, I'm still, like, completely torn on the grav hammer because I like the fact that it now feels more distinct when compared to the energy sword, but at the same time, I really wasn't a fan of the super slow, clunky, and almost, like, delayed wind-up time. So I guess, in a sense, I am also split down the middle on the grav hammer, so is what it is. They said that Sprint was very well received, which is no surprise considering Sprint in Infinite is literally as good as Sprint could ever possibly be. The instant sprint to shoot time and the really low sprint speed are so good. I'm so happy with that. So I'm not surprised that it was received well. They also said that some said the movement was smooth, others said it was clunky. Didn't feel clunky to me, to be honest with you. It felt fine, honestly. But apparently the feedback about it being clunky came in due to both the movement, but also the result of warping, which I think is their term for just like rubber banding or desyncing in online matches. And to address the latter, they said they're improving their network module to reduce the warping, which is good. They also said that turning the screen shake down to 0 was bugged and didn't work in the last flight, but it will in the next one. So if you don't like screen shake, there you go. In terms of equipment, the grapple shot was loved, which is, once again, no surprise whatsoever. Honestly, the grapple hook is, to me, almost as good as Titanfall 2's, if not as good as Titanfall 2's. I don't know, Titanfall 2's is, like, incredible, but so is Infinite's. Honestly, I feel like I like them both equally. But they also had a lot of feedback about the drop wall, about it not being effective enough, thanks to the long delay before use and activation. Now, this long activation time is apparently a purposeful design decision to make the players use the drop wall more proactively when preparing for an engagement, rather than using it reactively, like a bubble shield for example, and just panic throwing it down. They also didn't want to make it too durable at the risk of making it overpowered. So I think the key thing here is that a lot of people, when they saw the drop wall, just kind of expected it to function like a wall version of the bubble shield. But that wasn't 343's idea with it, which honestly I like. I would rather than make it distinct to the bubble shield, as opposed to just making it like the bubble shield but a wall. I think it's more interesting if they do that. Granted, I wasn't a huge fan of the drop wall in the flight, but I prefer the direction they've taken with it, as opposed to just making it another bubble shield. However, with all that said, they have reduced its activation time and are also taking a look at its durability, and this is an update that will be in the next flight. They said that they want to assess how the new activation time affects gameplay before they start tweaking any of the health of the panels though, so the flight will have the increased, or rather decreased activation time, but not the increased or decreased health of the panels. Feedback on the HUD, the heads-up display, was rather split. Some people loved the new streamlined HUD, others wanted a classic design, but most people seemed to not really mind as long as it was doing its job. Personally, I don't like Infinite's HUD at all. I really wish they just, like, the HUD before, from Halo 1 through to Halo 5, was one of those things that was literally not broken and it didn't need fixing. I just think it was perfect as is. It was so clean, it was very easy to access the information that you needed in an action moment when you're fighting. I just don't have that at all with Infinite's HUD. They said that the weapon cradle in Infinite's HUD, so the thing in the bottom right where it shows your weapons and needs and equipment and stuff, was a bit too small, and they're going to be improving that post-launch, so I assume that means increasing the size of it. They're also going to be changing the way that you see your second grenade type in a future update, which is fantastic, because that is honestly, out of all the issues I have with this HUD, that is the biggest one. The fact that the second grenade type is hidden away in, like, a UI sub-menu is really not great in my opinion, so very good to see them addressing that. But they didn't say if they'd do it before or after launch. Really hope that's before launch. They're also interested in providing more heads-up display customization down the road, but again, that's not happening at launch, maybe sometime in the future. And finally, on the topic of UIs, they received a lot of feedback about the customization UI. Now, they said that a lot of feedback said that people want a vertical list over a side-scrolling UI, which I strongly agree with, or at the very least, a grid layout like Halo 5 had. This layout is apparently not going to change for launch, but apparently it will evolve with each season, so I'm fingers crossing right now for a vertical list like Reach's. I feel like that was just hands down the best customization UI, or Halo 4's honestly. Reach's or Halo 4's, they were both great. People also said that the flow to equip customization pieces wasn't that smooth, but I mean, that was likely just due to bugs, I imagine. So that was probably going to be fixed for either the next flight or for launch. That's to be expected in the flight, because it's going to be buggy, right? Yeah, and that's pretty much all of the feedback. Like I said at the start, not everything that was being changed or added or updated or removed or whatever was in that article, because if it were, then the article would probably be like 1 billion pages long. But there's a lot of great stuff in there. It's good to see a lot of those changes coming through. A lot of them seem to be post-launch. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that, because a lot of them weren't like entirely crucial. It's not like complete game-breaking things, so I don't think I'm really that bothered about a lot of these being post-launch. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say here. It's quarter past, what is it? Actually, it's literally 1:17 in the morning. It's 1:17 AM right now, so that's the perfect time to end this video. Let me know your thoughts on all this news and the changes and the feedback down below in the comments, and I'm going to go edit this video. So thank you all very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next one.